Yang is right. Call center work is about to be automated away. I actually believe that this work is at risk of being automated much sooner than something like truck driving, and I can say this because I used to work in a call center and I saw firsthand how I was being automated. But before I go into that, I want to talk quickly about how far voice assistance has come in the past 8 years. Chances are your first interaction with an AI assistant was with the release of the iPhone 4S in October of 2011, where they debuted Siri. For most consumers, what they were paying attention to at that time was how well does this software understand me, and how much does this software sound like a robot. For the past 50 years, technologists have mainly been considering the question of how well does this software understand me, and that's been the focus of NLP, or natural language processing. The core challenges that NLP deals with are threefold, basically speech recognition, natural language understanding, and natural language generation. In a nutshell, how do I get this software to understand when I say the word steal? How do I get this software to know the difference between the material steal and the act of stealing? And how do I get that software to respond with an answer that I can understand? At the time of her release in 2011, Siri was being marketed as this breakthrough in natural language processing, but if we're being brutally honest, she wasn't really good at all. You could ask her a basic question and it would take her forever to pull up the answer, and most of the time she just didn't understand what you were saying. But then at some point near 2014, Siri and AI assistants like her suddenly saw this huge boost in performance. They were able to understand what you were saying, and they were able to bring up the answers to your questions a lot more quickly. The question is, what happened between the debut and that part in 2014 or 2015 or so, which changed their performance so drastically? Well, let's take a look at this graph right here. At the time of Siri's release, smartphones like the iPhone represented only 42% of the mobile phone market. 3 years later, that number had nearly doubled. The reason NLP made giant leaps in performance is because of how many people were beginning to use smartphones, which were able to send user data back to the software designers. Basically, every single time someone in the world used an AI assistant, that interaction was recorded as data and then used to improve that assistant. It was the explosive rate at which millions and millions of people were using these phones that allowed this to happen. Allow me to repeat that for just a moment and let this sink in. Every single time that you used Siri or an AI assistant like her, that data was used to improve a technology which is now threatening to disrupt millions of workers. When Andrew Yang talks about how the Fourth Industrial Revolution is threatening the wages and the employment of millions of people by using our data, this is an example of exactly what he's talking about. It's also worth noting here that all of the technology that you can find inside of an iPhone, from the lithium-ion battery to the multi-touch screen to the internet itself, was funded by taxpayer organizations. Yes, without the money taken from your taxes every month, we wouldn't even have the iPhone in the first place. To drive this home a little bit further, the 5 big companies that we hear about all the time making trillions of dollars, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, none of them would even exist if it wasn't for the taxes that you or your family put into this country for years. If that doesn't drive home the fact that you are a shareholder of this economy and you deserve compensation for all of these technological advances, then I don't know what does. Alright, now, so I've heard a lot of skepticism when it comes to the question of, can call center workers be automated? I mean, after all of us have an experience of trying to call in with a problem with our bill or some tech issue, and we have to deal with this robot service that we have to say the same thing 5 times, and then it finally just gets us into touch with a human anyways. Again, I was a call center worker, and this is where my experience is going to come into play here. The system that you reach when you first call into a call center is known as the IVR, or the Interactive Voice Recording Service. Really, the main purpose of this system is to provide as much information to the call center representative before they start the call so that they can end the call faster. So typically, if there's people in front of you, when you're talking to that robot, they're finishing up the call, and when they get to you, they already have your account pulled up and they already have some critical information about you that system has pulled up. For instance, when you tell them your name, when you tell them your account number, as much of the information that it can get for you, that's then used to help end the call a little bit more quickly. Now, the critical thing, though, is that this system is paying attention. They're collecting all of this data while this is going on. For instance, this system knows how often you tend to call in per month, per year. It knows how long of a customer you've been. How loyal are you to them? How many problems have you had in the past? How often do you call in about bills? How often do you call in about tech issues? All of these things have been taken and they're now used in an algorithm that I was actually having to attend meetings for near the end of my time at the call center, where they would sit us down and they would talk about this concept of empowerment, which is basically how much choice do I have in any given call to resolve the call. If you are unhappy as a customer, I have the ability to give you a $5 credit on your bill. Well, here at the end of my time with that job, I saw the ways in which they were preparing us to no longer have as much empowerment as we did before because the IVR system was taking things into its own hands. For instance, we now had a red, yellow, green system, kind of like, traffic lights. Whereas when you call in, I would immediately see, hey, your resolutions for green are what you need to go to first. We can tell that this person's been with a customer or has been a customer with us for this amount of time. They're this likely to try and leave the company. They're this likely to be disloyal to the company. So you can go for this resolution. All of a sudden, the system was constraining and confining all of the ability that I as a worker had to deal with that phone call. So at this point, you might be asking, what makes you so sure that this system could even try to replace your job? Obviously, call center work requires contextualization and comprehension and empathy and that human touch that seems so far away from so much of technology. Well, I'm going to show you a video real quick before we go. And I want you to consider one thing as we're looking at this. Basically, when you called in to the call center, my job was to authenticate you, ask you what your problem was. If it was a billing issue, I would go through all of the things that you're being billed for to see if there's an issue. And if we could resolve it, great. If not, I sent you to someone else who's a little bit higher up than me. If it's a tech issue, I would say, hey, have you tried turning the device on and off again? Have you tried X, Y, Z, and if you haven't done all of those things on my list, I would send you up to Tier 2 tech. And then lastly, if you were trying to call in for a new service or something, I would be able to look at all of the things that you buy per month, how much you're likely to do this, how much you're likely to do that. Inherently, my job was robotic in nature, and it felt that way. And a lot of people don't know this, but call center work is extremely tough. There is a large amount of people who commit suicide in this line of work because you're constantly dealing with people who are angry and you're not face to face, and people are a lot more cruel in this sphere. And honestly, I look forward to the day that call center work is done completely by robots. It might not be able to do Tier 2 work, but I can guarantee you that the millions of people who are working in Tier 1 customer service, they're about to go. And well, let's just take a look at this video really quick. To give you some background, what's happened here is a request has been made for Google Duplex to make an appointment at this time of day for this thing. And what happens is, in the background, this software goes and makes a phone call to make that appointment for you. Let's go ahead and take a listen here.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
So, after listening to how convincing that sounded right there, I have no doubt in my mind that that could read from a script and go through X, Y, and Z, and then transfer you to someone else if you can't finish it on that first tier. Tier 1 customer service is about to go. Just end of story. There's actually a lot of development with Google Duplex, but I'm going to have to save that for another video because I know that we've been dragging along here. But one final thing that I would just like to note about this phenomenon is all we're looking at here is a software algorithm that's been developed by Google. One team of people, I don't know how many people are working on this, maybe, 20, 40, 100 max, possibly. ones and zeros, and this can be replicated for zero cost. It's just ones and zeros that can be copied over and over and over and over and over. And when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, this is the main difference. When you had a tractor automate away a plow hand, you had to go and dig up the material, and you still had to have someone operate that tractor, which, yes, 10 people now can be done by one. But you also had factories filled with people who are making those tractors. What about call center work? What about Google Duplex? You had one team of engineers making one product, which can be distributed 1,000 million times to completely wipe away an entire sector of work. This is the fourth industrial revolution, and this is why we need Andrew Yang and a universal basic income. Thanks so much for following along, guys. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications, because I'm going to have a lot more content out shortly.